Finance, and I eventually got a sponsorship for Accounting and Finance. And I was very certain of what I wanted to do even after I had my scholarship. I knew the steps I had to take and I was very certain of it. But after many months, I realized that my passion wasn't in accounting and finance anymore. I still wanted to be an accountant, but the route I wanted to take was a bit different. That was when I asked to change my course to economics. So the point I'm trying to make here is, you should have a certain goal in mind. You should have a direction on how you want to achieve those goals, but don't be so narrow-minded. Keep your options open because anything can change. Moving on to my next point on how to carve a path. Ask yourself the desired end goal, which is what I stated earlier. And for me, it was to become the youngest CEO. At the time, my idol was Jalil Rashid. He was the former PNB CEO. The third part is to set goals. Setting long-term and short goals. Long-term and short-term goals. Like I said earlier, if you asked me when I was 16 what I wanted to achieve in the next 10 years, I could give you a very detailed answer. I know it's very difficult to come up with goals, but to me, it's worth taking the time to think about it. Spend a lot of time talking to your parents, asking yourself what you want to achieve, because if you do not have goals, you'll end up seeming like a headless chicken running in a park. You have no sense of direction. It's good to be oriented in life. Next slide, please. We'll move on to the second step. After you've done the self-reflection and figured out what you want to do in life, this is the part where you do the research. And like I said earlier, preparation is extremely important. After you figured out what the end goal looks like, now it's time to figure out how do I get there. The first part you have to do is identification. You have to identify an idol whom you wish to follow. Now this part isn't necessary, but it will greatly help you during interviews, because they will ask you who is your role model in the field you desire to study in. So have a rough idea of who your idol is. Discover how they got to where they are. For me, it was Jalil Rashid. He was an accountant, he did his ACCA, but he studied economics. So that was the path I wanted to follow. You don't necessarily have to replicate what they did one-to-one, but it's good to have a rough idea of how I might get there if my plan fails. Distinguish how they achieve their accomplishments, which is studying their resume, reading their background. It doesn't have to be one person, it can be a few people, it could even be your parents. Third point, understand the role of your profession in your sponsor's work environment. Now this is a very, very important point. When you, for example, accounting and finance, if you want to be an accountant, it's extremely difficult to understand what an accountant does in the central bank. If you're talking about a normal corporate company, then it's a bit different, because that person does what a regular accountant will usually do. But in Bank Negara, it's slightly different. So that's where you have to reach out to different people, which moves to my next point, networking. Networking is something that people tend to neglect in Malaysia. You will rise as far and as high as your talents and hard work will take you. But what that phrase lacks is as well as the people you know. Unfortunately, you have to play along the rules of the game. In Malaysia, you have to make use of the people you know. That's where networking comes in very useful. Reach out to the seniors you have who are studying your course. Ask them what accounting is like, ask them what economics is like, ask them what studying medicine is like if you really insist. Speak to professionals in your desired field. I'm a person who loves interacting with adults. Whenever my father went for his football matches, whenever his friends were sitting on the benches, I would use that time to talk to them. So I managed to network and connect with my dad's friend, who happens to be a very established accountant. So I asked him what an accountant does in Bank Negara. That's where he explained everything to me. He explained that accountants play a huge role because they conduct stress tests to see how financially stable the monetary market will seem if all falls down. So it's good to reach out to adults because they understand what everything is like. It's a bit more difficult if you try to research this on your own through websites, because you'll hardly find the answer you're looking for. Trust me, I went through hundreds of websites. And the last point, whenever you're networking with people, whenever you're reaching out to teachers, seniors, friends, adults, don't be afraid to ask questions. I was once on call with another one of my father's friends. He's a digital analyst at the Bank of England. I was on call with him for so long that it reached until 2 a.m. in the morning, and it was just me asking questions. But at the end of the day, that shows you how determined you are. You might think that asking questions until 2 a.m. in the morning made him hate me even more. But afterwards, I got a lot closer with him because that shows that person that you are extremely determined to achieve your goals. Last slide. Now, this is the third step. Execution. There are two parts to execution. Firstly, the individual impacts. Secondly, the impacts onto your sponsor, company / sponsor. Individual impacts. Now is the fun part. How do you talk about your cause when it gets to that stage of the interview? You have to explain to the interviewers why your desired cause has such a profound meaning to you. Going back to my story earlier, how I was a debater and everyone in my family works in the law sector, but I have no interest in law. My interest was in accounting and finance. The question that they asked me was, you have all these in your background, all your pillars of support is related to law. Your father is a judge, your sister's a lawyer, you're a debater, so why accounting and finance? Nothing in my resume related to anything that was relevant to accounting and finance. So my answer was this. I told him that a gift that I had ever since I was young was the ability to be able to speak well with people. And to me, that makes you a very good lawyer. You have to be able to speak well and confidently if you're willing to defend someone's life. However, what makes me stand out is that I enjoy working with numbers. That was something I enjoyed ever since I was young. I can work with numbers all day, 24 hours a day for a week, and I would never get burnt out. In fact, at maths and accounting were my strongest subjects for SPM. So I told them that to be a good lawyer, you have to be able to speak well. Being able to speak well is something everyone can do or something everyone can learn how to do. But if you're an accountant who's good at working with numbers, as well as being able to speak well, then you'd be a phenomenal accountant. So I'd rather be a phenomenal accountant than to be just a lawyer, because that capitalizes on the other skills I have, which is working with numbers. That was the answer I had for the interviewer, by the way. So, more importantly, a mistake many people make when answering interview questions on why you want to study a design course is not so much about what the sponsor can do for you, it's more about what you can do for them. Because think about it, you have thousands of applicants applying for the same course at the same sponsor. So the sponsor doesn't really care that much about how they can help you. It's more about how you can be an asset for them when you start working for them in the future. What makes you a better candidate than everyone else applying for the same course? It's important to reflect on how your goals align with the sponsors. So remember how I stated earlier that I wanted to be the youngest CEO? That's something you shouldn't say during the interview. You should state how your goals align with the bank's goals. What I wanted to do, if we live in a perfect world, was I wanted to make the money market more digital. I wanted Malaysia to be able to work more with NFTs, but not with these skeptical NFT coins that lose value once demand falls down, but actual fiat money. That was something I wanted to do. I wanted Bank Negara to revolutionize its system to work more with digital money. That was my goal, and that was something I wanted to do for my country. So that was something I stated during my interview. Figure out what you want to do to serve your country or to serve your sponsor, and state that during your interview. It's more important on how you can benefit them in the long run and not how they can benefit you. Because like I said earlier, there are thousands of smart applicants. How they can benefit you is quite a petty point. Try to emphasize more on why you'd be such a great asset to them and why they need you, and if they don't have you to achieve their goals, it will be 10 times more difficult. Last 2 points. Display your passions and interests relating to your cause that prove you're the best candidate. Like I stated earlier, for me, my passion was working with numbers, working with mathematical subjects. So find your passion and state that. My last point for today, give credit where it is due. Show the steps that you've taken and show the tools you've utilized. When you're doing an interview, it's very important to draw the line between being narcissistic and being confident. It's a very fine line, but to me, it's very important to take credit where it is due. Many people hold back from telling the achievements they've had, telling the extra steps they've taken because they feel like it'll make the interviewers think that they're thinking too highly of themselves. But think about it this way: if you don't tell them the good things that you've done, then they'll never know how good you really are. What I did was during my interview, I told them that, okay, my interest is in accounting and finance. But I'll be honest with you, no one in my family does accounting and finance, and it was difficult for me to find information. So this was what I did. I reached out to many seniors, I reached out to adults, and that really made me stand out because the interviewers did it after my interview. So that's all for my point. I'll pass it to Alan next. Thank you.
Thank you, Hari, for that amazing speech. So moving on to the next part of the presentation, I think I will have to speed run my presentation in IJAS because we exceeded a bit of our time. So I will talk about how do you, okay, now we have in mind like what you have to prepare beforehand, right? What you have in mind. But now what do you have to prepare? Your external part, I mean your physical appearance, your physical presentation, or your call it self-presentation. As Lang mentioned just now, first impression is key. Because when you go to interviews at this bank negara, you have to expect that, oh, they have a large pool of applicants there. You have, I can say, rivals of scholarship, right? Because bank negara only provides 40 spots. Right. 40 spots of scholarship fighting with like 200 candidates. So what makes you stand out first, like the first thing you enter the bank is Sasana Kijab, right? So of course you can you have in mind like, oh, I did this, I did that, but the most important thing is for you to catch the interviewer's eye, their attention first, which is your self-presentation. So I will divide my presentation into two parts, which is attire and attitude. So first question about attire is how to dress up for the interview. Moving on to the next slide. Okay, firstly is to have this. This was what I had in mind during my interview at Bangalore. I had this mindset of dress to impress. Basically, like, oh, I'm confident with my outer part of appearance, so that, oh, when I enter Bangalore, I'll be like, oh, this guy has something because this guy dresses well. Because as you know, entering the professional world, your first impression is very key because, oh, people want to make connection with you. People want that grand figure of a friend. You know what I mean? Okay, so usually you will have to dress business casual or smart casual. So can you tell that the dress code I'm wearing now is what type of dress code?
Smart casual.
Smart casual, right? So yes, it looks like, oh, it's kind of formal, it's smart for going out, right? But does it fit for interview session? No, right? Some of you might say yes, but actually it is actually no, because why? I'm wearing short sleeve. Alright, and this type of pattern of my shirt is very not suitable because it can somehow overshine your interviewer. So wait, can we move on to the next slide first? Can you guys scan this QR code first to have a rough guideline of what the dress code are? Alright? Then? Alright, move back to the previous slide. Okay, so in that slide, in that QR code, you will see that there's smart casual, business casual, casual, and so on. So, what attire do you think that is very suitable for you to go to interviews with big companies and these professional companies? What is the best dress code? Can I have an answer? Any volunteers? Okay, let's fast forward. It is business casual, right? So I want to pick one of my friends, which is very well dressed today. Although the dress code today is smart casual, but it turns out they wore business casual. So let's give it up for Len. So this is a basic type format of attire that you will have to wear because sometimes because there is a situation where when you go to Bank Negara, people went there with t-shirt like this attire, which is very not really suitable because although you have those points in sorry although you have those points in mind, you have it in your mind, but you will have a slight judgment from your interviews, right? Because like, oh, this guy macam salah tanya je, terus bagi this dress code, but then you didn't follow our instruction. Then how you want to serve our company, right? Okay, so wait. Second for ladies is Sarah Ryan. So these two. Oh, but don't wear sneakers lah. Wear something like Isn't Ice wearing. It's like sorry. It's like very formal lah, which is to impress your interviewers. So it will be more suitable if you wear a tie, and then it is preferably with a blazer if you are afford to have a blazer. Okay, for girls you can wear a blazer, and yeah, it can. But one more thing is the selection of. Oh, thank you. Nice. Okay, so for the choice of colors, you need to avoid like colorful clothing as it might seem informal or overshine your interviewer. Informal means that as you can see, like if you are aware, the business world they uses like mainly grey, dark grey color, black, and the t-shirt is only white, right? You don't go like to Bank Negara Summit, right? They wanted to present their budget, for example. So they don't wear like fancy party clothes, right? So they wear like business clothing so that they are well presented to their audience. And one more thing I wanted to highlight is the small details. So what an example of small details is, for guys, it's mainly of your hair, right? So like my hair is very not suitable for interviews because it's so long and it's kind of messy. So I don't want you to like, oh, you have to put oil to your rambut ke apa, well, excessive gel ke apa, but I don't care if it's long ke apa, but do have in mind that you want to be as tidy as possible. Your misai, your janggut, those little details will like the interviewers will write down. Because from my experience, when I went to Sasana Kijang, we are divided into several groups for group assessment. So when I arrived at Sasana Kijang, the night we have like a slight briefing with our facilitators. They stated that, oh, please be well behaved because we will start assess you by the time you enter Sasana Kijang. Right. So they will not assess you like when you start entering the interview room, but the way you behave around their compound is they are already watching you because you will move around in groups and the facilitators will be with you. So for the small details, I think it's a very big thing lah, because you don't want to be sloppy around them because they wanted their scholars to be very bright and very outshining. Okay, so I think you get a rough idea of what you want to wear over there. So moving on to the next point, next slide, is self-presentation of how to showcase yourself during the interview session. So I think it would be general to say that just be yourself, but I don't want you to be fake. But like I said before, you need to behave like what the interviewing companies or the scholarship provider what do they want the scholars to behave like. So like don't fake yourself just for the sake of the interview, but in a way just improve yourself for your future use as a human being. It is important for us to improve ourselves day by day, and it can make us a better human being in the future. Secondly is be approachable and open, because we know that during the scholarship interviews we will meet a lot of people that has same interest in a way. Because I'm sorry because I talk a lot about bank because that's what I got. But you have to be more approachable and open, because like Harid said, like even if I met people with Harid, I'll be more intrigued to like speak with him because he has more infos, right? And in a way, he has the same interest as you. So in a way, you can build that network from that pool of applicants, right? Because if he didn't get the scholarship pun, I can get the benefit of like, oh, like I can get infos from him and the things that he got from his father's friend, right? So it will be valuable for you to like approach people and like make friends during the interview session. And in a way, if you make friends, you will feel like a bit confident and you won't feel like very intimidated because we humans, when we go into a new environment, we feel like, oh, it's hard to adapt, right? So a way to adapt to that environment is like make friends so you feel very comfortable and for you to like be confident in a way so you don't feel like scared or you feel very shy to talk and so on. So you just be approachable and open and don't feel intimidated. Next one is because when you feel intimidated, it will in a way will demotivate you because like you see that Harizani is a very potential scholar, so you don't want to like talk with him. You feel like he's my greatest rival and so on. But you can have that, but in a way it will demotivate your confidence now because we know that in this world there will always be people better than us. We have to accept that fact. So in a way, we have to just cope with them. Just go. Why not? I make friends with him, and in a way, you will feel less intimidated. Because based on my experience, I really felt intimidated now because there are scholars which is very far well prepared before me. Not only Harizani, but also different scholars. But turns out I'm not like mocking them, but in a way, they didn't get the scholarship pool. So in a way, don't feel intimidated because you don't know what the chances, what really their rubric of selecting you. Just be yourself and just feel that, just have this mindset of, oh, I wanted to be a scholar and don't care about others. Just be yourself and you have to believe that, with the values that you have, the scholarship provider will see you and they will get you as their scholars. Yeah? And then, of course, showcase leadership skills. Of course, in my negara, they were looking for a very team leader person. But it is important for you to not be too domineering because we have to know that if everyone has that mindset of, oh, I want to be a leader, blah, 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 and then in all groups, for example, in this one group, there's 8 people, and each and every one of them wants to be the leader. So who wants to be the follower, right? So if you are a very dominant leader, blah, 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 you can take that platform as the group leader, but you have to have the ability to read the room. For example, in my room, there's Harizani, which is a very outgoing person and he is very keen to take the leadership position. You have to take the fact that there's already a leader in my group, so I need to step down and just act as a follower. Why I mentioned this point is because in my school I think I was the leader of most of my groups, most of my organization. But when I went to Bank Negara, I didn't even get the chance to like lead my group or even lead my anything lah. I didn't even like showcase my leadership skills. This actually macam it doesn't reflect what I write in my essay. Because in my essay, I wrote like 70% of my leadership skills, but during the assessment, I didn't even showcase my leadership skills. So the interviewer asked me, wait, in your essay you said that, you are a national born leader, you can anywhere you go. But during the assessment, we saw that you didn't even reflect what you write. So what is trying to tell us? Why is so inconsistent? I got like asked in my interview. So I said like, okay. So my point was like, okay, I understand that I am really excited and I really want that position. But I have to understand when there is too much leader, when the banyak sangat kepala, there will be no solution to the group. In fact, there will be more like, who wants to be they just want the position for the sake of the name, but not giving solutions to the group. So I just stepped down and said, I just wanted to be a follower because if I were to be a leader also, it might end up being there's akan ada banyak like conflict lah between who to follow semua. So I said like, I just like I think that it would be better to be a group follower than to be there in my group because I see that my friend, I think his name is Susie, I can't remember, because she was very outgoing, so I didn't want to like, I didn't want to like bottom her and say, I want to be leader. No, I just said like, just go because most of our case study was about, I think it's about the cops, right? Yeah, so I was not it wasn't really my thing lah. I didn't even like know what to do. It was more about accounting and finance. You have to calculate the data, the money and so on. Because from my background is a pure science student, so I didn't know what to do. So I just like, my part was like, oh, because I see in my group there were people who is better than me, which can provide a better solution for my team. So I just take the decision to step down and just be a follower. So the interviewer said, oh well, good job, that's a good answer. Okay, oh, one more thing I wanted to highlight is when I entered the interviewing room, I got a compliment lah. They said, oh, you were very well dressed today. So that makes a good impression, okay? So when you get that good impression, or you got your interviewers' attention, in a way they are easy to accept what you're saying. They won't like judge you too much. In a way, they will be like, oh, it will be easy for them to understand and be in your shoes. You know what I'm saying, right? So in a way, they will like feel, they will like understand what you are trying to say, and in a way it will ease your interviewing process. And then just be likable, just be friendly, and then most importantly is just enjoy the experience lah. Because in my life, I've never thought of being like going to the Sasana Kijang, going to Bank Negara, one of the like, it was a new experience for me lah. I never went to a very large bank, a very professional body where everyone is like very professional. The food, no lah, not the food lah, but the experience there is just like, oh, I'm entering a new phase in my life which I never experienced before. Coming from Terengganu, I have like never been to a this very cool architectural buildings and so on. It is a very good experience for me lah. So my last advice would be, this is a general advice. So for the scholarship season, I can say, so just try for the best. Just good luck, enjoy all the interviews, and just have faith in yourself, because you are wonderful students. And just trust the God's plan, because if you don't get what you want to achieve, maybe there's another thing that is waiting for you, which is better. So thank you and have a good day.
Alright, thank you, Alan. So I have to make this quick or I get kicked off stage. So let's now dive a little bit more personal and how you yourself can prepare for an interview. So first of all, an interview is all about confidence in what you say. And how I approach this is I would talk to mirrors because I hate people. I hate talking to people. I'm an introvert. Not you guys. You guys are awesome. So I would frequently talk to mirrors and preferably in English because most of the scholarships I applied to the interviews were conducted in English. And how that helps is it helps you notice those kinds of small details that you might overlook if you don't do it. For example, it helps you correct your posture. It also helps you repair those kind of awkward hand movements you might be doing. And also, it helps you maintain a good expression that would give off a friendly image to those interviewers. And another way for me that I approach building my confidence in interviews was that I would watch YouTube videos, whether it's from TED Talks or MIT Open Courses, etc. Because they are really established speakers, they know what they're doing, and they will give you the lessons you need in a way that is very concise and probably very relatable to what your situation is right now. And lastly, a way to be more confident in the way you speak is to speak louder. And the reasoning for this is, when you speak louder, you tend to cover up your stutter, especially for someone who's very introverted like me. I used to stutter a lot when I speak because I used to speak in a very quiet tone. But when I spoke louder, it overshadowed that stuttering, and I could convey my points in a way that was more convincing to the interviewer. Next slide. Okay, I actually don't know what to name this section, but I'll just call it content. So this is basically how you prepare for those very niche, those kinds of niche questions. Like, for example, tell me about yourself. And for some people, this might be very easy to do because they're very talkative. But for some, it might be hard to choose what you want to talk about because sometimes this and a very abstract topic can have you thinking so much that it ends up leading to nowhere. So a pro tip for me would be to think of a situation, experience, or upbringing that you would want to share. Something that makes you yourself and something that distinguishes you from the other candidates. It can be, I don't know, maybe what kind of chocolate you eat or something. I don't know. And to prepare for any out of the box questions. So that question that I said just now, the chocolate question, was actually asked to me by the interviewer in my Yayasan Tenaga National interview. I answered, dark chocolate is the best chocolate in the world. You guys can't prove me otherwise. So I just want you guys to not think of an interview as very lenient. Don't tunnel vision into it. Just enjoy the experience and have a calm mind when you enter the interview room. So yeah, that's it for me. We don't really have much time, and I don't know if you have time for questions, but if you do have, please give us questions because it's super hard to come up with things to talk on this topic. So, okay, so you guys can list your questions in the Slido and we'll look on it later. Thank you very much. Guys, we are taking a short break to come back as soon as possible, okay? We're kind of feeling a bit late time. Yeah, so come back as soon as possible. The session can start.
Is this a video? Yeah, I know. Is this a video? Short film. Cannot play. Tak apa, I can buka terus play pada game. You can run. Babi je. Beli awan datang.
your perception. So to know how you approach problem and use specific skills in your previous experience to evaluate the ability to handle tight situations. So to overcome your problem, how's your approach to that, how your view in that, and so on. Okay. Right. So here are the example question of CBI. And I'm not gonna read every single thing of it. You can take photo if you want.
Yeah, the difference between CBI questions and general questions is the fact that general questions can ask you about your course. It can ask you about like, oh, you know, like what is your like course, why do you like your course, stuff like that. But CBI questions are always asking about situations that you endured in the past and how you handle them in that kind of context.
Okay, so here it comes. The most important part about interview. You are asking for tips. Everyone are asking for tips. Bang, ada tips lah. Bang, ada tak? So here are the tips. First of all, brainstorm multiple situations that you could provide as to answer the question, and you guide them as just a little bit exchange the situation and so on. Okay, 30 seconds for that. Alright, for the first general CBI tip is to brainstorm multiple situations that you have encountered before that could provide an answer to their questions, so that you won't be stumped. Like if they ask you something, you will not be like, I think I have encountered. So you have to brainstorm all of these things, and let's say they ask you different questions. You can use the same situation, but then you change it a little bit to answer their question. Just like how, does anybody still remember how you do nilai murni and DM? Where you have multiple situations that you have, one situation that have multiple nilai murni and so on. So this is the same way of doing that. And second, know how to showcase your skills through your experience and activities. How do you gain something from your experience? It's not about how you encounter the experience, it's about how you gain something from the experience. What changed you? What are the turning points from that situation that lead to a better you? So the next one is slide in information about your passions in your course by relating information about your passions to situations that you encountered. It doesn't supposed to be like, oh, I am pursuing engineering, so my situation should be engineer related at all. It could be like you have passion in football, you have passion in fishing, you have passion in writing and so stuff. But you have to relate that what fishing give something to engineering. Let's say you want to invent some I'll say new rod, new fishing method or some stuff like that. So your passion will lead to your related course. Next, show that you are the person for the sport and how your personality will fit their value. Again, scholarships is about a very big company. You have to fit in with their value. You have to fit in. You have to say that, oh, I'm the man. You have to take me, or otherwise you will regret that. Okay. And last but not least, do not over-exaggerate yourself when answering the questions. Although that you want to say that I'm the man, but don't say like, you will regret if you do not take me. Do not say something like that, okay? So, that's overall general tips for me. I'll pass the next one for Kelly-Star to do common mistake and a very highly good, what do you call that, method for you to answering CBI questions. Thank you.
So these are the common mistakes that we realize we made in our interviews, and it's very easy to make these mistakes because you don't really realize it. Because we all know interviews, right? We know general interviews where they ask you like, oh, like what was the hardest experience that you encountered? What was the challenge? What's your strengths, your weaknesses? When I think about CBI interviews, this was a completely new concept to us last time, and this means that this would be a new concept for you guys as well. So the thing about CBI interviews is that if you notice in the questions before this, it was always phrased like, oh, recount a time when you did something like this, or recount a time when you had to work with people from different backgrounds. And keep in mind, CBI is only in two different scholarships, which is YK and Shell. So if you're not planning to apply for these two scholarships, although we do highly encourage you to apply for these two scholarships, you will not be undergoing CBI interviews. So, alright, first one is saying we instead of I. So, you as a general person, you don't want to come off as braggy, right? So a lot of times, my mistake that I made in my YK interviews, because context, I was unsuccessful after my YK interview and I was successful after my Shell interview. And I realized that there was a few mistakes I made in my YK interview that I did not repeat in my Shell interview, and that might have actually changed the outcome of their decision because of those mistakes. So I realized that in my YK interview, I said a lot of we instead of I. So what it sounds like is like, oh, I was in a team that was organizing this event, and we communicated with teachers, we did this, we made the proposals, we met and collaborated with everyone. But then the question is, what did I do in that team, right? If it was all about we, we're not giving the scholarship to your team, we're giving the scholarship to you. So you have to point out your role that you play in that particular team or that particular organization that you're planning something with. So which leads me to the second point. You only recount the situation but not specifying the role that you play. So a lot of times it's easy for us to get caught in the loop of always like, oh, if you're explaining like an activity that you organize, you would spend a lot of time trying to explain the activity, right? But you're not spending a lot of time explaining how you plan the activity or how you overcame the challenges that came with planning the activity. Because I understand and understandably, I was also a person who tried to explain how the activity worked more than how I made sure the activity was successful and how everyone enjoyed it in the end, that kind of situation. So another thing is to not point out the outcome of the situation. The thing about CBI questions is that it's like a two-part thing. You tell them the situation, you tell them what you did, and then you have to tell them how your actions impacted the situation that you're in, right? Because if you tell them that, for example, oh, I helped organize an event, so do you organize the event and was it successful, or do you organize the event and then the event flopped, right? So they need to know the outcome and see how, if you were not in that team, how would you have impacted that event then? Because if you were not in that team, could they have done it without you? Or did you actually bring something to the team and actually show that you are a contributor, that you can possibly contribute to their company in the future? So in this case, you need to make sure that every time you point out the outcome situation, if it's a happy outcome, then great, everyone's happy, right? And you can tell them how you're successful and how you were very pleased with the outcome. But say it was a bad outcome, a negative outcome. Maybe you were planning for a competition and you wanted to win that competition, but then you failed. And that's absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine to point out the negative outcome situations as long as you back up that negative outcome with how you learn from the situation. Because if you just point out that oh yeah, I worked really hard for this competition and I became really disappointed after the competition because I didn't win anything. So then the question is, so are you a person who's easily demotivated? Or do you actually take that failure and turn it into something better for you to drive you for your future competitions, for example? So make sure that you always point out a certain degree of positive outcome from situations, even if it's a bad outcome. Okay. Fourth one, fifth one. Making up stories that didn't happen. Yeah. So I think this is also pretty common because understandably when you see a lot of scholars and how they work, you also think that these scholars just somehow live lives that are very exceptional, right? What happens if you are just a regular student that is going through life and then maybe you join a couple competitions here and there, or you organize one event, but it's a very small scale event, I don't know, decorating your classroom. Maybe you think that that's not a very interesting event or it's not high impact enough, but you can use those situations anyway as long as you can point out how you contributed and the outcome of that situation. So in the case you want to make yourself seem better, don't try to make up any situations because it's pretty obvious when someone is lying in an interview, and these interviewers have been doing it for years, so you would know when you are lying. Last one, not answering within the time limit during the video interview. So this is specific to Shell because Shell has a third stage video interview where you're not doing it live with the person. It's not even on Zoom with the person. What happens is that they'll play you a video of the question, someone asking a question, and then the video will pause, and they'll say you have 3 minutes, give your answer. And then the recording will start for 3 minutes, and then you have to talk within that 3 minutes, those 3 minutes. So it's because there isn't someone there to tell you okay, stop, you can stop talking. The video will just cut. So if you don't explain within that 3 minutes, and you don't get your point across, then basically like there's nothing you can do because the video is not recording anymore. So this is specific to the Shell interview as well, just like a little thing about Shell. Next slide. Yeah. So let's move on to the STAR method. So this is a rubric that you guys can utilize to help build like a framework of how to answer these questions to ensure that your answers are like all encompassing and actually answer the question, right? Because like kind of say you have to point out situation, you have to point out like what you did, and then you have to point out outcome. Sometimes when you answer questions, it's easy to forget that you have to point out these things. So this is something that you can possibly hold on to if you are having trouble like brainstorming situations or brainstorming how to make a good answer. So the STAR method is basically situation, task, action, response. It's basically something we found on Google, but it's actually pretty helpful. So situation, task, action, and result. Let's go to the first part, situation. Okay, yes. Situation means to describe the context of the situation. So you can't just come into an interview, like for example, the question was like, oh, describe a time when you faced a challenge when working in a team. You can't really just come in and say like, oh, okay, I was organizing this event and this event was like really unsuccessful. You have to give them the context of how that event happened and where was it in your school, was it like a competition, proper? So you have to say like, for example, a relatively good response would be last year, I was part of a committee organizing my school's annual Explore Race event. So it can be very mediocre things like decorating a classroom or like just your school's own event. It's completely fine because it's still your experience and your experience shouldn't be like regarded as not important if it was important to you. And yeah, so you describe the context situation. Give them some details or maybe a little bit of a timeline of when it happened or like was it your school and where it was, stuff like that, but keep it brief. Next one. T, task. Explain the tasks that you were responsible for in the situation. Alright, so this is when your role comes in. This is where you explain to the people exactly what were you responsible for, number one, and exactly what did you do to carry out the responsibility. So explain what you have done with the responsibility that you're given and da 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 da. So for example, I was responsible for liaising with teachers and school management, as well as other students in the committee in order to plan and gain approval for the event. Okay, let's just digest that for a while. Okay, so as you can see in this response, you're actually showcasing skills here. You're pointing out a lot of skills within just one sentence. You're saying that you're a communicator. You're saying that you're a collaborator. You're collaborating with teachers. You're saying that you're talking to the teachers, right? Which means that you communicate. You're saying that you think critically to plan this event because this event wasn't just something that already had a template and then you were just there, like, telling people what to do. No, you actually had to plan something. You had to think and ideate about something. So this means that you're actually thinking critically and then to gain approval for the event, which means perseverance to a certain extent because things don't get approved very easily and most of the times you have to go through multiple revisions or stuff like that. You can always point at it. So remember, when you're telling a situation, it's not just because you're telling them a story. You're trying to showcase your skills here. And when you tell these things, you actually show them that okay, it's possible that this kid is a good communicator, is a good collaborator. They don't know if it's good, but they know that you can do it. So how you prove it's good is in the next part. A. Action. Action means to describe what action you took to resolve an issue or improve the situation. So in this case, this means that in a situation that you're recounting, most likely there will be a problem because it's always like a situation, I'm planning it, oops, there was a problem, I overcame the problem, happy outcome. That kind of like, that English climax thing, the graph of like how a story goes. So for example, halfway through our plans, I had to mediate a conflict between the student leaders as we could not agree on the appropriate activities to hold due to budgetary constraints. So outline and give them context of the problem that you encountered, and then after that you have to tell them what you did to handle the situation. For example here, you are mediating a conflict. The conflict was between the student leaders. So this is a general, like, pretty common conflict, right? When people cannot agree on things because everyone has their own ideas and stuff like that. It can be like normal classroom conflicts, like, I want this whiteboard to be green, or I want this whiteboard to be red, that kind of thing. So even if it's that kind of conflict, you can probably like dramatize it a bit, like, maybe people were just like unsatisfied, but you can say people were like really unsatisfied, and I really had to mediate this conflict. Like, you can dramatize it a little bit, but keep it realistic, guys, that kind of sense. So what you're proving here is that if you actually successfully mediated a conflict, that means you are a good collaborator. You pointed out that you were collaborating, but were you good? And here you prove that you are good because you actually resolved the conflict after that. So because of that, you're giving them like the action to how you handle high pressure situations, for example. So this is like another skill that you're pointing out. And then the last part, R, which is result. So you provide details of the result from the actions, due to the actions that you took. So clearly, if you were not in this team, probably the conflict probably went on. Maybe the event wouldn't have been as successful because you didn't mediate that conflict and then the plans were all over the place. So you're proving to them that you were vital in this problem, because if you were not that, maybe this conflict would have never been resolved. So, for example, to prove this, after I suggested a compromise to review the activity plan and prioritize the most engaging activities, we managed to reach a conclusion and successfully held an explorers that all the students enjoyed. So the outcome is that everyone enjoyed it. So it was a positive outcome. So like I said, it can be negative, but just spin it into a way where you kind of learn something from it, that kind of thing. And yeah, basically the whole point of answering these questions is so that you show them that you have these skills, and not only do you have these skills, you are good at these skills. And that's how you prove to them that you are a good candidate for a scholarship kind of thing. Alright, next slide please. Yeah, so most of the scholarship bodies are looking for answers that will encompass these kinds of qualities in you. So they're looking for team players, decision makers, problem solvers, good communicators, leadership capabilities, critical thinking, creativity, integrity. It's kind of just like a list of skills that you find on Google. But honestly, this is what people are looking for. So make sure that when you answer something, it is going to answer and point out a certain kind of skill like this. Yes. Good.
Right.
Yeah.
So add on one more about this. Okay. So for this criteria, you cannot say that, oh, I am a team player, I am a decision maker where I do some stuff blah 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 like that. But you have to showcase that. You have to showcase that you are a problem solver. You are a leader. You are a leader. You have that leadership capabilities in you. Let's say if I'm talking like, oh, I am a school captain for rugby team, for hockey team, for football team. I've encountered many, we have fought a lot throughout our tournaments, throughout our games, and we have finally managed to secure a gold list, one goal, one silver, or some stuff like that. So that shows you are a leader. You have that leadership capability where you lead your team for a glory. You lead your team for one achievement, one good achievement. And you cannot say that, oh, I am creative. What you do for what are you doing? I am just creative. You cannot say like that. You have to showcase it and you have to show your passion towards it. Alright? So that's how you show your criteria. That's how you show them you have that criteria that they wanted. Right? That's all.
Oh yeah, and something else also is because like when they ask you to recount like situations, they generally ask you to recount problems, right? And a lot of times, sometimes those problems can be quite sensitive to us because it's like it is a struggle for us, right? If you have to tell them about a problem. So in some situations you might get emotional, you might like start to trip on your words, but just remember to always stay calm. And they're not trying to push you to your limit, they're just trying to get to know you better. So as long as you're honest and you keep your feet on the ground, just stay calm and answer it as best as you can. Don't like be scared of crying in interviews. I'm gonna confess a little confession here. I actually cried in my Bangalore interview, but I got a scholarship. So it doesn't really it shows that you are to some extent vulnerable, I guess. I don't know whether that took a few points off if I cried in the interview. But generally don't try to cry. Don't cry in your brownie points. But if you do cry, don't worry too much about it. Because understandably if you cried about something, it's something that was very emotional to you, and it just shows that you're human. So don't be too afraid of being under pressure and being. Okay, so we do have some time for a Q&A. So 10 minutes for Q&A. Alright, so drop your questions in the Slido, virtual participants as well. Oh, question, right? Okay, sure.
How do you handle situations where the people you are interviewing asks you a question or a situation that you haven't been?
That's a good question. I think For example, they ask you like, oh, what's like your worst like heartbreaking situation that you've been through? Maybe you haven't been through that kind of situation. I think it's important to not make something up. So tell them that I've been very fortunate to not have to go through these very hard situations because I had a relatively fortunate life, like something like that, And then say that maybe I didn't go through a very heartbreaking situation, but something that I could relate to a hard situation, maybe to a moderately hard situation. Doesn't have to be like a soft story, as long as it's like a something that you will feel generally a little bit sad about. It doesn't have to be like heartbreaking, but like relate something that's on a similar level, I guess. I think it's best not to skip the question ID.
And sorry, to add on, it's not to sleep about the question, but it could be better if you say like, if I encountered that kind of situation, what would you do? If you ever encounter that, you may be lucky that you not encountered that situation yet, but in future, maybe if I encounter that situation, what would I do with that? Your approach of solving that problem, right?
Okay, I think we should take a question from Slido. How can an introvert thrive in a group interview setting? Would you like to answer that, Roman?
Okay, I'll try. Although I am a very extrovert person, okay. So how can an introvert thrive in group interview setting? You know that everyone has chance to talk. Everyone they will give you and by that you have to tell your story as long as you are comfortable with that story. And you have to be very passionate about telling the story. It's not about you don't want to communicate with people, you don't want to interact with people, but you have to tell that, imagine that you are talking to yourself. We have been done that before, right? Oh, I have to do that. So imagine that you are talking to yourself, you are telling yourself your story. It's not about people listening to your story. You are listening to your story and make it very, very good and passionate about it. Okay.
Alright, so next question. Is the CBI criteria, for example, creativity or integrity, considered as soft skills as well? 100% correct. Yes, mostly CBI questions assess you on your soft skills generally, because like if you have questions about your course or like why you're interested in your course, then you can be like, oh, I like coding because I'm good at coding. That's a hard skill. That is a technical skill. But then what you're trying to like test from your skills here is your soft skills, because you can't demonstrate soft skills through, for example, why I like my course, right? You have to tell them a situation. So this is, yeah, it's 100% soft skills.
Alright, next. I would really love to take this. If asked a moral dilemma, would you give your honest answer? Possibly controversial, yes, we know that. Or politically correct answer? Well, I recommend you to give both answers, and you have to showcase your, because this CBI kind of interview is for them to know you. It's not like 100% correct of that political correct answer. It's not 100% correct because it is politically answered. So you have to know that they want to know how you think, how you view things, how are your opinion about this kind of thing. So you have to give your honest answer first, but link with the politically correct answer to get that you have that sense of common sense up, I'll say.
I think I'd like to add on a little bit to this as well, because like, for example, in GPA, they're very nationalistic, like scholarships, compared to like, for example, a private company like Shell or Petronas, etc. So read the rules. If you're in a GPA interview and they ask you a controversial question that might relate to like, like Malaysian values that are more traditional, then don't give them a very like liberal, westernized answer, because you know for sure that that's not going to sit well with them. But if you know that you're like interviewing for a company that's generally a little bit more open-minded, then maybe you can push it a little bit, but keep your opinions as neutral as possible in a sense, but also make sure that you have a strong like reason why you have your opinion. Yeah. How do I improve my soft skills? Should we answer this in the section? Okay, yeah. How do I improve my soft skills? Many ways to improve soft skills. Soft skills can include like communication, collaboration, etc., etc. Best way, honestly, is to do activities in school, because it's like the most accessible and easiest things to get involved in. And if not, then you can always take courses online if you actually want to, actively improve your soft skills. Take courses. If you want to be a better communicator, take like maybe debating or public speaking kind of courses. Those kind of things.
I have a question, like what if that is a situation where you can't really answer the question, how would you navigate that? And per se, if they ask like, they want to dig more into your personal life and you are just not comfortable in like pushing forward, how would you navigate that?
Right. There must be a certain limit for you to share your story, right? For sure, we are as a human, we don't want to overshare things. But you have to know that you want to tell about yourself to the limit where you are comfortable with. And if let's say you don't know how to answer that, you cannot say that, oh sorry, I don't know about this. Don't tell me that. You have to put that, give your value towards that situation. Or you never encounter, or sorry, if you are not knowing how to answer it, just add on 1+1 where you know you have the additional value that they will value you. I think something like that.
Yeah. I think like another method that you could use is like if you, for example, you ask you a technical question like bank account, you're like, oh, do you know anything about monetary policies and like cryptocurrencies in central banks? And then like you actually didn't read anything about it. Don't try to waffle your way through because they are the experts here. You are the person who has no experience in this. So be honest, say that I honestly do not have any like knowledge on this. Don't waffle your way and say that it's something that I should be reading up on and it's something I'll definitely read up on in the future. Yeah, I guess like because if it's a very specific question, then you cannot relate like another thing that they would appreciate. You can't say like, oh, I don't know about cryptocurrencies and banks, but I do know about like monopoly money. You know that kind of thing. You can't say that. So just be honest and say that you don't understand. In terms of like not being comfortable with sharing, I think to a certain extent you should train yourself to be as comfortable as you can in sharing your stories. However, if it does become too emotional or it's really something that's really traumatic and it's understandable, so you can tell them that I'm not comfortable with this because of so and so reason, and I hope that's okay. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure you understand because they're not robots, they're humans. So.
The time limit for interview. Yes, there's definitely time limit for interview. But let's say like Shell, they say it's 30 minutes interview. 30?
Around 30.
Around 30 minutes. So you have to be exactly 30 minutes. But let's say if the interviewer wants to know more about you, they will ask more questions. And that if you exceed the time limit just a little bit because of them, not because of you, because of them. So it's okay probably. But general time limit for this CBI, I'll say like 30 to 45 minutes. It will never be like 1 hour session of you talking about yourself. Just around there, around 30 to 45 minutes, I'll say. Any more questions? I guess that's a wrap up.
Thank you so much for listening and hope.
Thank you, Katie and Arman. So we've done two of the different types of interviews. We've done general interview and also CBI. We'll move on to national awareness, and I'll invite Yet and Anas for this section.
So I see that you guys are like slightly tired now. If that's the case, when I say clap, I want you guys to clap. And when I say clap, the people in the online chat, I want you guys to type C. Okay? Alright? Clap. Clap, clap. Clap, clap, clap. Okay, let's go. So I wanted to like give like a very long introduction, but let's just say that we don't like that much time. So my name is Anas.
Oh, my name's Ian.
And we will be talking about national awareness. So again, I wanted to like give like a whole backstory and so on. But let's just say that I'm sure you guys have read like a few articles before, right? Like articles on like flooding. That's something that like tends to happen every year, and it's a national issue. Or maybe stuff like public transport in suburban areas, or like anywhere that is not Kuala Lumpur. And those are all what we call national problems. So the question is, why do they ask these questions, and why do these scholarship bodies ask questions regarding national awareness, particularly the private companies, and what do they expect from your answers? So first of all, They want to see your ability to answer the question. Sometimes it's on the spot. Sometimes you get like some time to like think about your answer. So they want to see whether your answer is firm and assertive. What I mean by that is it understandable and is it convincing? Like, will your interviewer think that, oh, this guy is actually pretty smart, like this guy actually thinks in a way that I like. Not necessarily like I like, but like in a way that will make them impressed. You don't want to give like a weak answer. You don't want to give an answer that is not going place, like how to say macam BS lah. I'm not gonna say the actual word, but you want to give an answer that will make the interviewer like remember like, ooh, this guy kinda nice though, but like, hmm, please don't think of it another way. Anyway, they also want to see the ability of you to articulate your thoughts. Because people like me, right, I'm also introverted. That's why I'm quite nervous right now. But can, because we all can think, right? We all can think. Some of us are overthinkers, right? And we all have like our own like solutions that we put in our heads. Have like this dream scenario. Maybe you like. I'm sure some of you have like fantasized you and your crush like going out on a date together, right?
No.
But are you able to put it in words? Are you able to tell your crush, hey, I want to go out with you? Well, in the interview-based scenario, it's more on like, are you able to give a solution on the spot and actually say it out? Because sometimes you can think of the answer, but can you let that answer out? Like some people have that ability to just like answer on the spot, while others need some time. And we'll get to that later, but you can ask for time to think of the solution, to think of a proper answer. Also, you don't want to goreng too much. You want to give an answer that is logical. Logical and it relates to the topic that they ask you about. You don't want to like goreng too much. If you do not know that well about what they're asking, which is what I actually got during my B&B interview, then it's okay to like tell them that honestly, I'm not very knowledgeable on this stuff. You can, however, I can say that, then you give your answer. So in case that your answer might not stand to the spot, they know that you're being honest and you know, like they understand because they're going to ask you some specific questions, and we don't expect you and like we don't expect you and none of the scholars will know everything about national awareness. So just try and give your input. I'll let Ian do the talking later about that one. And yeah, also, sometimes it's not really your fault. Sometimes you just want to see the fit. Like, are you what the scholarship body is looking for? Does PNB want you? Does Shell want someone like you? Does Petronas think that you can work in their computer science department? Or do they need accountants and so on? There is a fit in here. You might not just get you might not be able to get into a certain body just because they're not what you're looking for, and that's okay. That's just how I say, wallahu alama. Only God knows. So yeah, sometimes don't be too hard on yourself if you like can't give a proper answer. Also, in the group setting, if they ask like in groups and they ask you to get, let's have like a forum or like a discussion or debate, which again that will be in the later sessions. They want to see whether you can like give and take. They want to see whether you can give answers and whether you can take criticism or improve on other people's like answers. They want to see all of those. Okay, we can go to the next slide now. The types of national awareness. So some of these are like pretty obvious. Like I already mentioned flooding, but basically anything environmental in general is pretty easy to come out. So like natural disasters like climate change and food wastage and public transport. Those are stuff that we have like encountered before. Sometimes it's in your BM kebat, your sejarah kebat, maybe even in your English essay. Some of these are some that you have encountered before. But then there are also some like corporate related issues. So for me in particular, I can read this one. ESG, environmental, social and governance. So long story short, ESG is a way for investment firms to calculate, not to calculate, but to, yeah, it's actually a calculation, but it's to determine whether they want to invest in a certain company or not, depending on how they deal with like the environment and also how they deal with like developing the local economy and so on. Like, are they like, is this company able to help train the locals and make them smarter? That type of thing. So that will tie into some of the other like more common topics. Like ESG will tie into like climate change. Like should I invest in an electric car company or should I invest in a company that produces like public transport like trains and buses? That type of thing. Also, there are like some more like uncommon topics or like probably uncommon but different topics. Like recently there have been more questions surrounding mental health, and that is a question that can be asked in interviews. There's also questions regarding financial literacy. This is like a pretty bank-centric question where they like to ask about like the current EPF crisis. I'm sure some of you may have known about it, but it's about like people withdrawing too much money and so on. And then there's also something that most of you might be familiar with, technological advancements. How many of you have not used ChatGPT? Raise up your hand. Not use. Not use. Not use. I see that a lot of you have used it, right? I haven't used it either, but I'm aware of it. And it's better if you guys can like do research on like what are the consequences. Will it affect the employment in the future? Will AI jobs affect future economic the future economy, the future state of the economy? So you can see that you can like tie a lot of these things together, and it's not necessarily going to just be like one of them. But these are like the general things that may or may not come up. Okay, clap, 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 clap. I'll pass the floor to Yan.
Okay, hi guys, my name is Kiet. I'm going to talk about how you guys can maneuver through the abundant list of topics that he has presented to you, right? So it's very important for you guys to know how to actually approach national awareness interviews. So one way to do this is actually strategizing. So the way that you strategize is you might need to ask yourself certain questions that might help you to narrow down your research areas. So the very first obvious question would be, which issues are you most passionate about? Everyone in this hall might have a distinct area of passion. One might say that they're more passionate about education inequality. One might be more passionate about the mental health of youth in Malaysia. So everyone has a distinct liking to a certain area of domestic issue, and it helps for you to navigate towards like propel yourself to that issue that you are most inclined towards to before you go to any other topics. Because that's when your reading actually gets most productive. The second part is actually which ones are related to your intended or applied major. So let's say you're an aspiring economist, you're applying to Banigara. It's wise for you to know how we're doing economically. Banigara releases quarterly reports, and there's a lot of Twitter might be a credible source, but you can easily find how we're doing in the internet. It's worth to know how recent fiscal policy changes have been made, or what are certain approaches that have been done by the current government. The third one is which one concerns the scholarship body. You would expect that Bank Negara would want you to know what are recent changes. For example, they just announced a new change of governor, or possibly how we're doing in the quarterly report they just released previously. So I just want to get it out there. How it's worth to know what the scholarship bodies also want you to know. Okay, that's how you actually narrow down how you want to prep for this. Going back to the second question, actually, which ones are your first point? Is which ones are you passionate about? So, for example, if you're more passionate about education and equality, then you might just want to read about how this might be a very well-known fact how most of SPM leavers do not want to pursue tertiary studies. See, I see some nods, right? So those are the quick facts that you might want to equip yourself with. For example, if you're most passionate about environmental issues, so which parts of Malaysia is going to flood by 2040? So these small facts that you have on top of your head that might actually make you stand out because you know your stuff. That's what the scholarship bodies want you to see, which is that you actually know what you're talking about. That's how you are able to separate yourself from others. The last one, which ones are recent issues? So you would see that, for example, the use of ChatGPT, right? So for my personal GPA question. My question was, you know how this happens every SPM season? You have your TikToks yang flags that they take 3 subjects and they still fail all 3, right? And then the background song, macam waving, that's all right. Judge and I don't know who said it up. But basically, so my question to your GPA was, so how do you feel about this? How do you feel that those yang macam fail 3 subject posting this content in TikTok? So macam that was my question to you. So those are recent issues, right? And moreover for your batch, especially, is that I'm sure that one of you will get a ChatGPT question. Should we use it in education system? Should we use it to research? Does it reduces our independence? So these are certain questions that you might want to ask yourself, alright? Okay. The second headline that I want to emphasize on is building an opinion. Because reading something and understanding something are completely different stories. Because if you read an article, you might feed yourself with the known facts, but I think you need to build yourself this habit of asking yourself, what do you think? Because you read the opinion of an economist, you read the opinion of a journalist, but then you, yourself, and an 18-year-old, in some case 16-year-old, like young, you want to know how you stand in these certain issues. It's not just merely you ambil what you see in the internet when you scroll to Freemason video or something, but you need to build yourself, what do you think about that particular issue. And secondly, I think it's just a mentality that you don't equip yourself with this knowledge just for scholarships. Wouldn't it be cool that somebody across the street tanya you macam, oh, do you know where Malaysia will be flooded in 2040? And then you can easily answer. I just feel like it'd be very interesting that it's a long-term investment beyond scholarships, how you can actually equip yourself with this knowledge. So I feel like the mentality shouldn't just be impressing very professional people in front of a round table, but the mindset should be that that knowledge is going to bring yourself further wherever you will walk into life after scholarships. So that's the mentality that you have to have before you delve into the research part. And then do some light reading. So when I say research, right, do I expect you to make a fact file? Do I expect you to make a fact sheet? No, because truth is, national awareness interviews are not about facts. It's not really emphasized on the facts, but rather it's how you approach those certain issues. The only reason I say research is because what I mean by that is the light reading that you need to do. For example, knowing certain facts, how much percentage of Malaysia is affected by mental health illness, how much of Malaysia is actually demotivated to actually pursue teaching studies. So these are facts that to back your point up. These are not your points, these are evidences. So I just want to get it preface that how the facts that you equip yourself with is not your points, rather it is the evidence to your solutions. Alright, that's my next slide, please. Okay, but then I asked you guys how to build an opinion, but then it's not easy as it seems. So in group interviews, where sometimes you have a national interview, like a group interview question about a national issue, then what it should be done, the first tip that I have is that you should write down your ideas. This might sound like a very primary school idea, make a mind map or something, but actually just writing down on a piece of paper, what can you stamp out of that particular issue. The reason why this is very important actually in group interviews, for example in Petronas, is that you would have to identify which of your points would be synonymous or redundant with your groupmates. You do not want to talk about something that your groupmates have already said, right? You would want to identify which ones of your points are worth to extend or cut out. So this brings me to my next point, which is that do you want to cut certain things or do you want to extend it when you have a redundant point? So the solution to this is that sometimes when it's a national awareness interview, you need to come up with solutions, right? So what you might want to do is that when you see a redundant point, see if you can extend from that solution. So see if they have not mentioned a certain fact. See if they have not mentioned a certain percentage, and you add on, and then you further add on with that particular solution. So this is very great because like when you are able to coalesce and also interact with your group mates when it comes to solutions, it shows that you're actually listening. Because sometimes you make the fault of dalam interview kan, when it's group interview, then your group mate tengah cakap, you suddenly tengah prepare your own answer. And I understand that, I will do that too. But the truth is, you need to be proactively listening as well. Okay, that's one. Secondly is the power of just asking why. Because sometimes we're stuck at the first level of solution. The truth is, the way that you navigate to actually achieve a long-term solution is actually continuously asking this one letter, which is why. So, for example, a very common example is why do we have flash floods? So this might bring to a poor water collection system, water drainage system. But then why do you have a poor water drainage system? Maybe because of certain budgeting problems. Then why do you have, so it might not end, it might become a paradox in and of itself. But my truth is that equip yourself with as much knowledge that you feel like in order for you to come up with a nice, decent solution, an 18-year-old will be able to come up with. Alright, that's one. So for example, if it's the issues of internet access in government housing, public housing areas, right? You would want to say that a long-term solution will be installing the routers itself rather than subsidizing, because you never know what happens in 2 years or a year, right? So when you continuously asking why, this actually helps you to shed light on the actual root problem that is currently shadowing the problem that you see on the surface. So continually asking why actually helps you a lot. And under this same headline, right, you need to provide justification towards your solutions. So we make the mistake of continuously believe that our solutions are final or our solutions are optimal. One is being open to your groupmates' ideas is very valuable. So during group interviews, when it comes to national awareness, do understand that everyone have their own opinions. So for example, I think for my GPA, it's not in the debate part, but it's still a national issue part, which is that it was about having local films, right? Having local films over international films. And then I was supporting local films, for example, macam Mat Kidau. And I even quoted Sutun in my GPA interview. But my point is that everyone has their own approach to certain domestic issues, and it's really worth listening to how others feel. This comes with the mindset that your solution is not might not be the best one, and it needs fine tuning. So do understand that. Yeah, that brings me to my last point, which is that you need to be open, but be firm. When I say be firm with your national awareness solutions, I want you guys to have this mentality that you guys don't change the huge essence of your solution simply because of your groupmate's suggestion that might not even be tangible. When I say be firm, understand that your solution, although it might not be optimal, but when you want to make a concession, you need to provide justification why you change that part of your solution. So today you have solution A kan, and orang tu cakap, oh, I don't think that this should be done. And then you want to change that part. Even if you want to change that part, you need to provide that justification. But if you want to be firm, if you feel that you must maintain your solution, then you need to provide justification as well. This is where being firm comes in. Being firm is that you're open, but you provide justification while you're standing where you stand. Do you get me? Alright, great. Alright, so that's how you form your stance as you read to your national issues. Alright, next slide please. Okay, now that we're running for a few minutes, right, maybe it's helpful for you to see how a sample answer would look like. So I invite Shami, please. Online chat type 3. Clap. Clap. Clap, clap, clap. Okay. So remember what I said about national awareness interviews, how they're more concentrated on the solutions rather than facts. So you will see how Shami would then present his solution later on with certain evidences that he might have just researched for this, alright? So this is how a sample answer might be. Okay, Shami. Floods are a persistent problem in Malaysia. If you were in a position where you could actually do something about it, what would you do? Alright, Chad, can I have 30 seconds? Sure.
So when we're dealing with natural disasters such as floods, right, I think the principle that we have to keep in mind here is that prevention is better than cure. because after the natural disaster strikes, there's not much they can do. So let's look at how we can prevent future floods in Malaysia. I say there's two categories of floods. There's floods that occur near the sea, and there's flash floods, which recently happened in places in KL last year, right? So for problems of flash floods, we really have to address the main issues that if you observe, like I did, if you look online, flash floods is caused by water not having anywhere to flow. This is caused by poor drainage system. So to prevent this in the future, we actually have to solve the poor drainage system problem. So what is causing this poor drainage system problem? I'd say there's not enough people investing in proper drainage systems. Because let's be real, a good investment in a skyscraper will attract way more attention than foreign aliens into having a good system that can filter out the water. So I'd say investment firms in Malaysia, such as Khazanah and UPF, should start prioritizing preventive measures against natural disasters, like actually installing a good drainage system. And not just in urban areas like nearby KLCC, but also in rural areas where these things happen too, like Taman Srimuda last year. Secondly, by looking at other countries, how can we actually prevent floods that happen normally, right? I'd say we have to have a good early detection system. Like look at Japan. When an earthquake strikes in Japan, they know 2 hours before that the earthquake is going to come because they are able to have the technology to actually detect it. So we can use technology in Malaysia, such as using satellite detection technology or tectonic plates that we can install in the oceans to start to predict floods. So we need to engage our meteorology department to start working on this and emphasize the importance of early detection. So once you're able to detect the floods early, you can easily notify the victims and people who will be affected so you can get them out of safety. So this is actually why I'm interested in pursuing my course. I want to study engineering and computer science so that I can work on these projects and figure out how can we use quantum computing, how can we use AI to solve and to create early detection mechanisms such as this. So just to recap my answer, I say two approaches. First, address the drainage system issue. Secondly, address the issue of early detection. With these two things in mind, if we have our priorities correct, we're able to solve the issue.
Thank you for your answer, Dani. So I want to point out like a few things about his answer. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, you should request thinking time if you need time to lay out your solution. And he did. He requested for 30 seconds, and he took less than that due to time constraints. Of course, you can request like around like 1 minute in total. Try not to go above that because you don't want to like make the interviewer wait either. But it's okay to ask for time to think because everyone needs to think, right? Secondly, Sharmi had a really good flow. He started with like he started well, and then he elaborated like two examples. Like first of all, he said prevention is better than cure, and then after that he proposed like a new method of handling the floods. And then after that, he summarized everything up again. So if you're able to summarize like as your answer, try and do that so you can like remind the interviewer one more time. And that reminds me, clap, clap, clap. Okay, and lastly, he linked it back to his course, and I know that you can't really do that all the time, and sometimes like the connection isn't very clear. Like maybe at first you wouldn't know how a lawyer could stop flooding, but maybe you could like propose like trying to like do campaigns and like tell the government to change the law. Like sometimes you can't just do that because the companies don't have the control, right? And it's okay if you don't see like the connection between your course and the solution. But if you can, try and do so. It will make you. It will remind them about like. It'll be more memorable to the interviewer, and again, it will make them seem like you are a good fit for them.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize on how Shami has addressed the long-term solution, right? This is where national awareness comes in. I have said it 2 times already, which is like how you actually come up with the solution rather than presenting a keynote presentation to your interviewers. So I feel like it's very important for you to come up with a solution. Another advice that I have is do have some personality. So don't make your answers very AI generated and very monotonous, but will have some flair in it and how you act, why you have some certain liking towards the issues. So, for example, he links back to his course, which is a hint of his personality, which is what he wants to do in the next 4 years. So, do have some personality in your answers when it comes to answering national awareness questions. So, this is what how that sample answer can be used for your reference. All right, let's proceed to Q&A then.
Right, I believe it was Arif just now. You asked a really good question of what happens when questions get really hard. And I see the thing that I did was taking the time to think. Like for instance, I was just talking to Jan about this just now. But during my bank in regard interview, they were really hard to the point that they said that I see that you're ambitious, but what if another company like Microsoft comes and offers you a job after you get the bank scholarship? Would you cancel your bond? So I gave a rational answer, and they said, okay, let me make it harder for you. What if your parents had cancer and then you needed the money from Microsoft to actually fund their medical bills? What would you do in that situation? That question took me aback. I was like, whoa, why are they asking things like this, right? But I looked at the intention. The reason that they're asking this is to see whether you can think rationally on the spot and whether your intentions actually align with what you say. So in situations like this where you actually don't have a clear-cut answer, like I can't just tell them I'm going to cancel the bond for to save my parents, or I can just tell them that I'm going to sacrifice my parents for my scholarship because that's ridiculous. So what I did was I said I'll take a really rational approach about it. I would negotiate with my bank and our officials. I know that they're really considerate. I'll take all the measures into account before I make the final decision, and I'm sure we can reach an accord. So I'd say sometimes there's no answer. You just have to be really rational. Link it back to your values and your personality.
Okay. Let's have some questions then. First one, what fillers do you guys use instead of especially when the question stumps you? What do you think about yes, that's a good question. I'll take this one. Okay. Oh, that was a full filler. Okay, but my filler is ironically is I don't have a filler because I don't really bold. So then jumped out. But when my interview, during my interviews when I actually have a moment to think, I show with my face that I'm thinking actually. Sometimes look at the corner of that ceiling, quite nice lights, or quite nice wall, and then look around to know and indicate that you're actually thinking of something. Because actually anything is preferable than it's also preferable for you to inform like Shami did, telling the interviewers how you need time to actually address the question. So those are my personal feelings.
Okay, I'm actually a guy, so I'm not the best person to answer this. Well, during the interviews, I tried to avoid using the word right? Again, I did ask for time to think for some of the questions, but I know it's a habit to say or and you can see what Ian did just now. He has right. We all do that, and it's fine. But if you're aware of it, try and like reduce it. And when you have the time to request for a minute of silence, then go ahead and get that minute of silence. And yeah, it's okay to be awkward sitting there. And okay, for the yes, it's a good question. So I personally I would see what who the interviewer is. Like if the interviewer seems like a very friendly person, that is actually a pretty good answer. But try not to say the word damn now or like wow or like uh babak pelik though, funny. Like of course you have to be in like a formal setting so you can say honestly that is a pretty heavy question. Um, yeah, honestly that's a pretty heavy question and I require some time to think. Or you can and yeah, I would say that you can use this, but if your interviewer doesn't seem that friendly, then must just ask for some time to think and stay quiet because I'm pretty sure he's the type of person that wants to be quiet as well.
Yeah, but I'd say don't care about like, these really small stuff because I remember walking into my backyard interview and my interviewer was humming while they actually asked the question. So it's okay, they don't expect you to be a robot, just be human, just be yourself. Yeah, so things like this is really better. Next question is what additional reading videos should we do before the yeah?
Okay. Remember I told you how you can narrow down your question, narrow down what you want to like equip yourself with. So my personal sources would be TED is a nice source of videos. Vox was also a nice source. But basically, my additional reading of videos were mostly related to in YouTube, so Vox and TED, but also articles are nice. I'm personally subscribed to New York Times, but then you can also have a lot of free articles as well. When I say additional reading, remember that when you Google search, already have a narrowed down Google search for you to actually get that answer that you're looking for. Sometimes your articles may be opinionated, sometimes your answer is has a political bias towards it. So do know that your Google searches have a very big role when it comes to achieving or at least get the additional sources that you want to get before your interview.
So, quick pro tip, make sure you source your reading. Because if you can say that, oh, actually Harvard said this is the reason that I want to go there. Or you say that Reader, which is like the insurance agent, investment agency, said this shows that you're actually reading things and you're not making things up yourself.
Give me 5 seconds to think. Clap, clap, clap. People in the online chat, taxi please. Okay, so for me, I honestly just Google whatever topic I skip. I Google like scholarship tips first, right? And then I see people saying similar things, like asking about national issues. And then I try and Google regarding that national issue and I read like articles. But of course, I will be aware of like the political bias and so on, right? Honestly, I like to read from like news sites, typically the Star or FMT, Leadership Today.